Welcome to Adoption with Nairi. I'm running a support adoption channel, so information, tips and techniques are on my channel. So if you're interested in that, then please subscribe by hitting the little button in the corner of the screen. Now today we're going to be talking about therapeutic parenting and what I would call 5 tips for success. The thing is about therapeutic parenting is people struggle with it because they don't entirely know what it is and they make it more difficult than they need to. Therapy is a healing process, and therapeutic parenting is all about trying to heal your child from their past trauma. So my first point for you is to carve your own pathway. So many of us look at what others are doing and think that that's going to be the measure of our own success. But of course, all of our children have their own blueprint of how the world looks to them, their own background, their own way of behaving. They're so unique and individual that there isn't going to be one way of therapeutically parenting. Of course, there's going to be techniques such as pace parenting. So if you've not found those videos, there is pace parenting videos on my channel. I'll link them in the description at the end of the video. There are ways of doing it, there are techniques, but at the end of the day, you can make your own technique your own way. You can carve your own pathway, and I suggest to be successful, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to block out the noise and work out what works for your child and carve that pathway. Tip number 2 is build on your successes. So again, I have parents that come to me, adoptive parents that come to me and say that they are struggling with certain things and how to do certain things, and they don't understand attachment, therapeutic parenting, things like that. But when you talk to them about how they're doing, you realise that they have a measure of success already. They are already managing to cope with situations that perhaps in the beginning they didn't. When your child comes to you and they're very new, you're going to be learning so much about them, and so you're going to have to build on every success that you have. But over a period of time, you'll look back and you'll realise there were situations that you managed to qualm, that you managed to kind of put right. And so you would need to look at, where did you have those successes? Why did they work? What was it that you said? What was it that you did? So for example, I know that with our boys, if I want to find out what's wrong, I can't come in too early, I can't come in too quickly, I can't ask the questions too quickly. I've got to wait until almost that trigger's almost happened, especially if I don't know what it is. And I also know that I'm not likely to get much out of them unless we're at home and the environment's very quiet and very nurturing. I'm not likely to get to the bottom of what it really is. So my third point is show your own vulnerability. I know I've fostered and adopted children that find it very hard to show emotion, and they feel very uncomfortable in the presence of adults that show emotion. But showing your own emotion and your own rawness, and showing sometimes that you're not coping very well, is so important for your children, because you can tell them about trying to help with their emotions and explain that to them, but if they don't actually see it in action, how do they know what that looks like? How do they know it's okay to cry? How do they know it's okay to be upset and to feel what's going on around them? So I think sometimes if you're not coping and you don't think you're being a very good therapeutic parent, or life is just getting tough, it's okay to show that vulnerability toward your children and explain to them why you're upset. It could be that you're upset over the way things are going with them, but it's okay to show that. I think that's a really important point. So my next point for you is, obviously what we're seeing with our adopted children often is that there are triggers that are hidden, that we don't know about, we don't understand. So over time you'll begin to realise what they are, but it does take a long time, because maybe a trigger would happen in one environment but not in another. Maybe things move, so triggers that they first had when they first came, and then not triggers that they have later on. So things change and they evolve. But what could be useful is to make a list of triggers and know what they are in advance. So it might be that you know every time you have a larger family occasion that the behaviour is more difficult, or when you go away somewhere, when you come across a dog, when you meet a certain person that looks like a certain thing. It's really good, especially in the early days, I think, to write those triggers down and have a look at them and see if you can see any patterns there, and see if you can maybe think about whether that might relate back to history, or you've no idea why that is. And then when you are having situations where there is a bit of a meltdown, a bit of a problem, then you can maybe go with that list, not obviously showing the child the list, but think of that list in your head, and then you can start asking the questions and try to connect the dots, a bit like a dot to dot picture, kind of make the connections and see if you can get somewhere with that. I mean, to be honest with you, you won't always, and that's something that you have to understand about therapeutic parenting. You won't always find the answers. You may never find some of the answers, and again, that's okay. It's okay to actually come away and be totally clueless about why that situation happened and why that meltdown happened. It's okay to never get to the bottom of it, because there's several times when I've never got to the bottom of certain situations that have happened. But over time, I'm learning with my boys that there are certain triggers that always feature in the background. School friendships, jealousies, being told no. Those are just 3 things I can think of at the top of my head. And my 5th point for you is we often try to explain a lot to children and use a lot of words. And what we need to understand, especially with younger children, they don't have the concepts, they haven't built the picture in their minds, they haven't seen the 3D reality of what we're going on about. So you might say to them, you might use language that they don't understand, and you think you're explaining it really, really well, and you might be. Many other children might understand what you mean, adults might understand what you mean, you might understand what you mean, but your child doesn't. And so I'd really recommend that you use lots of 3D objects and role play with them, and also use books and cards and things like that to help. So pictures or 3D objects will always help a child to build a concept in their mind. So let's take it really basic. You might say to your child, I see you're unhappy today, you seem restless, what's all that about? But your child has not yet really got the concept of unhappy. Maybe they're a very young child, or maybe their child just hasn't actually got these basic emotional concepts in place, and so they can't explain back to you why they don't feel unhappy, because they don't actually have that concept of unhappy yet. And so really it's good to have scenarios that you play out with them. You can use figurines. I've got videos about that on my channel, how you can play with children and use figurines to build up storylines with them, and books where you can portray, it could be an elephant having a hard day, but really what you're saying to them is you're having a hard day. So use resources with your children so that they can build up an understanding of where you're going with an idea. If you stay to the ends of the video, I'm now going to show you a resource that I think is really, really useful. I don't think it's useful for children under, say, 4, but I think it's useful for the over 4s. I've shown these resources before in one video, but it was quite a long time ago, so I'm going to show it to you again. It's a Therapeutic treasure deck from Karen Treisman, and it has emotions cards. Now you can find stuff about emotions on the internet. I wouldn't say there's a huge amount, but if you can see the quality of these cards, that says proud, disgusted, disappointed, excited, and so it goes on. So you've got half of those emotions cards, and then older children again. So I mean, it depends how switched on your child is as to whether they can cope with the emotions cards. This is a good one, safe. And then you've got some sentence completion cards, which I think would be for older children. People are, and they're sort of conversation starters. So say, for example, your child's come home from school and you can tell they're really down, they've had a bad day. You might say, okay, let's have a bit of fun. People are, a dash day is when, and then they fill that in. So good day, scary day, bad day, busy day. I think my dash should. So that could be filled in with teacher, carer, social worker. So loads of completion cards, sentence cards. They're not as perhaps pretty as the other ones, but I think finding something for older children is a bit tricky. So you've got to go a bit cautiously with them. They're meant to be used by therapists, so just bear that in mind. But they're good sort of conversation starters, and sometimes when I've not been able to reach it to my boys, I've not been able to work with them therapeutically at all, then they have been a really good starter for me to help me to do that. So guys, I hope that's useful to you. There's so many things I could say about therapeutic parenting, but what I would say is don't allow the word therapeutic parenting to deviate from the fact that all you're doing is just trying to understand your child. That's all it really is, so don't let it bother you. So I hope you found that useful. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the rest of my videos. I'll also link my other therapeutic parenting videos for you right now.